What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the Fighting Game Tutorial Series, we are going to be improving our session list menu and feedback for the players. So this is our Fighting Game Tutorial Series, and when our players search for a match by pressing the Join Game button on our main menu, we were displaying a log in the top left corner of the screen that states how many matches were found. This is great for debugging and for just verifying that our logic is working, but we do want actual menu or actual pop-up for this. That way it's a little bit more polished for the game itself and for the players that are going to be playing the game. On this session, we're going to hit Host Game. On the other session, we'll hit Join Game. And once the number of sessions is found, we will get this pop-up telling the player how many sessions have been found, and all the other logic like displaying the sessions with their session ID will still be present. Now if you want to get caught up in this series before you follow this episode, you can check out everything we've done, from our hitboxes to different characters, throws, all that cool stuff. I'll link this icon in the top right corner right here so you can check out the entire playlist. Alternatively, if you only care about the online logic, I'll link you to the previous episode where we created the session list for our game. Now the first thing we want to do is go to our widget that we want to create for today, and that is going to be our session list widget. So I made a new widget called Session List Results Pop-Up. We'll go into that widget right now. To create a widget, you can press Add, User Interface, Widget Blueprint. This will work in Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5, but if you're in Unreal Engine 5, there will be an extra step here where you have to pick the parent class for this widget. The standard user widget is perfectly fine unless you have something you'd rather use, so just press that and you'll make a new widget. Now going into the session list results pop-up, here is my widget. Here's what we're going to be displaying to the screen for the player when they find suitable matches after the search. Now, if you are in Unreal Engine 4, you will have a canvas panel on this widget by default, but if you are in Unreal Engine 5, you will not. I still decided to add one, just so I know this works in both Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5, but of course you have full reign over what this widget looks like, so feel free to change it. So I have one canvas panel right here. I'm going to add that to the widget, and that will just be a standard canvas panel. I didn't change anything on this one. Then I added a canvas panel to that canvas panel, and I get this one right here, and this is what has my actual size that I want. So everything's pretty much default. It's anchored to the top left, but I did change my size X and my size Y just to get this, because this is the size of the pop-up that I want in my game. Nothing else has to be changed for this canvas panel. Next thing I did was add some text. This text is going to be the text that we display on the pop-up. So common text element and just drag it to that canvas panel right here. I've called it the search results text. We are going to want this to be a variable because we are going to edit it in the blueprint. So we can go ahead and check that now. And you can change these positions, these factors, all you want. It's super simple. For my anchors, I left it top left this time because I am just going to center the text within this canvas panel. But of course, as you've seen throughout the series, you have many ways of doing that. You could use the center anchor and change the alignment. It's really up to you. For me, what I did was just change my position X, position Y. I set my size of the text box to be the size of the canvas panel. As you see here, they're really the same size. I set my position to 400, 200. Because I knew this would be in the center of this canvas panel. And the reason I knew that is because if you click on the canvas panel, you can see the selection text right here. It says it's 800 by 400. 800 is the X, 400 is the Y. So if it's 800 units long, then 400 units would be half of that, and we want it to be in the center. If it's 400 units tall, then 200 units would be half of that. So once you take half of 800 and 400, those are your positions. So 400 and 200. But I made the size of it the same size as canvas panel, so 800 and 400. The reason for this is because if the text box is as big as the canvas, when we center it through the alignment and through size of the content, it is going to appear in the middle. So I set my alignment to 0.5 for the X and for the Y, which means the origin point for this text will be the center, not the top left. And let me show you what I mean. If I switch the alignment to 0, then it is wrong. The origin, or the top left of the text box, is in the center of the widget. That's not what we want. We want the whole widget to be centered. So setting it to 0.5 fixes that. And same with the Y. If you set it to 0, it's not going to be in the right spot, but setting it to 0.5 will fix that. Also selected size to content, because if you don't do that, it will be centered on the X, but it won't be centered on the Y. You could manually adjust it, but making size to content and just allowing it to be resized to the proper size is just easier, so I went ahead and did that. Now I've added my actual text in here that I want to say for the template or for the default value, which is the search return 1 results. We're going to update this and bind this later, so just put whatever you want in there for now. Then we get to the font, which I made it size 36 with an outline size of 2. Now for justification, I centered it. If you don't do this, it won't really matter since we did size the content and position it, but if you did make your text box bigger and didn't use size to content, then you'll definitely want to justify it in the center so that it actually is centered on the canvas panel. Everything else is the same. Now I've also added an image, common image, and this is going to be our background for the pop-up. So I've called it pop-up background. It starts off as a variable. You don't have to make it one if you don't want. I'm actually going to take it away. I don't think I need to make it a variable. But if you want to have a changing background for these pop-ups, you could do so. For the anchor, I chose full, which means the image will try and take up the entire width and height of the parent element, which is the canvas, so it's just going to fully fill the canvas. Perfect size, so now all my offsets are 0, and then I went ahead and changed the 0 to the -1, so it will appear behind everything else. Everything else in here is the same. So this is our little pop-up, at least the design portion of it. We're good to go there. Next thing we want to do is actually fill out the graph or the logic for this pop-up. So when we come in here, I have my event construct. That's the only event that I have that we're going to fill out from the starter event. So we don't need the tick or anything, just the event construct. We are going to set the text for the search results text to have the proper number of results. Then after 3 seconds, we're going to have the pop-up. And then once that animation is complete, we're going to remove the pop-up. So go to event construct and you can search for it if you don't have it here already, simply enough. And we're going to need to determine what our text should say. In my case, I want it to say the same thing that it did on the designer view. So the search returned the number of results and then results. To do this, we can use a variable. If we set the variable when the widget is created, it will be valid and will return the actual number. So first thing we need to do in here is make a new variable, plus variable, and I've made it an integer called num sessions found. Compile and save once you make it, and give it an instance editable and expose on spawn, set to true. That way we can configure it. As soon as we create the widget, we'll be able to set this value. The default value for it is 0 because by default we haven't found any sessions. Now we can take our num sessions found and get it. And then we can search for string append and get this node right here. Here's where we want to put the text that our text box is going to say. So the search return space. In here, I want the number of results. So I'm going to pass in num sessions found. When I do that, it's automatically going to convert the integer to a string, which will work perfectly for our needs. Then we can press add pin right here and add words after that. So we're going to say results. Now we need to set the text of the text box. So I'm going to grab my search results text and get it. And I'm going to drag off of it and type set text. And the node we want is set text in parentheses text. Then we're going to pass in the string from the append, which will automatically convert it using this toText string node. That's what you see right here. Now, this is going to set the text properly on this widget, but we need a way to get rid of the widget. It could be user control, or you could add some input on here. I'm just going to have it fade away after 3 seconds. And once it's finished fading, we're going to remove it. So after the set text, I'm going to call set timer by event. And the way this works is we pass in a time, 3 for 3 seconds. We drag off the event and type add custom event. You can call this event whatever you want. This is going to be the event that fires once this timer is done. So after 3 seconds, this event will be called. So here I have hide popup. That's what I call the event. And to hide the pop-up, we're going to play our fade out animation. Now we don't have that yet, so let's go ahead and make one. So go back to the designer. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, you might have this animations tab down here. If not, you can do window, animations. If you're in Unreal Engine 5 like I am now, I do automatically have it down here. But regardless, just get to this tab any way you can. This is your animation sequencer. In this case, I want to animate my canvas panel widget component. I'm going to specifically animate my smaller canvas panel of the two. You could do the entire widget if you want, but if you want to have other things on this widget, you might want them to behave differently, so I went to the lowest level that I needed to edit. I renamed it to pop-up canvas just for the sake of this animation, just so it's a little bit easier to follow. So this is now called pop-up canvas. I'm going to click on my pop-up canvas, go back to my animations tab, add an animation, call it whatever I want. I called that one fade out since this is a new one. I'll call it fade in. You don't actually need to. We're only going to use the fade out, but you can add other animations here. So if I go to fade out, I have my pop-up canvas here with a render opacity of 1.0. So if you're not familiar with the animation sequencer, you can press plus track to alter fields on the given component. In this case, we want to alter our pop-up canvas. That's what we clicked on. You'll get this box right here. Then you can press the plus sign here to add a track on that specific component. So press. Now we're going to add a render opacity, and then you'll get this right here. The render opacity is how much we can see, how opaque it is. If it's 1.0, we can see it fully. If it's 0.0, then it's fully transparent. Now, this is your timeline. So these represent seconds. So this is 0 seconds right now. That's where it's going to start. Then this is 1 second in. I want it to fade out fully in 1 second. The way I make this work is by adding these keys at the current time. So render opacity defaults to 1.0. At 0 seconds, I can add a key by pressing this button right here, and when I do that, I'll get this red dot right here. This little red circle represents the key, and it's saying the render opacity is 1.0 for this panel at 0 seconds. If we move the timeline using the scrubber to 1 second in, we can then press the plus button again to add another key at this time. We'll get this red circle. Then I can change the render opacity to whatever value I want. It could be 0.5, but in my case, I want it to be 0. So I'm going to change it to this. Now when I scrub the timeline, you see that the animation actually plays and the pop-up is fading out. That's what we want. So that's our fade out animation. If we go back into the graph, now that we have created the animation, under the variables tab there will be an animation section, and you should see your fade out animation here. You can drag that into the graph and get it. Then drag off of it and type play animation. The target of self is fine because we're playing it on this widget. The animation is already the one that we plugged into it. The start at time is if you wanted to skip to a certain point. We want it to play from the start, so 0 is fine. We only need it to play once. We don't need it to loop, so 1 is fine. We're going to play forward, and the 1.0 speed is okay. Now, once we finish playing this animation, we're going to remove the widget just so it's not present anymore. You could keep it on the widget right now. It doesn't really hurt anything if you do, but it's a little bit messier to do that. It's better to clean up the widgets when you're done with them. So if we drag off of our fade out animation, we can search for a function called bind to animation finished. That's this node right here. And we can drag off the delegate and add a custom event just like we did with the timer. And I called this one remove pop-up. And you can see that's this right here. So once this animation finishes, it's going to call this event. And at this point, we want to call remove from parent, which is going to remove the widget from the viewport. Now our session list results pop-up is complete. So we basically just have to trigger this and display it to the user. We're going to do this in the code. So let's go into the code. And we're going to go to the fighter template game mode.h. If we scroll down in here, we had a function called display session info. This is when we were displaying the individual session information, like how we create those elements with the ID on the session list. I added another function right below this that is called void display search results popup. So basically, we're going to display the widget that we just created. And the widget needs to know the number of results that need to be passed into it. So also make sure there is a parameter of int numResults. Lastly, make sure to make this function a U function, that is blueprint implementable event, meaning that we can call it in the code, but the logic is going to be handled in the blueprint. Once you've created this function, we have to figure out where to call it. And we're going to call it when all of the sessions have been loaded from the search. That is handled in the base game instance, specifically the base game instance.cpp. Now we're going to scroll down to our search for sessions completed function. So when we're done searching for all the sessions. In here, we were looping through all of the found sessions and displaying the session info. That's perfect. And we could add the search results pop-up in here, but if we did that, we would be creating it over and over again. We want to wait until the for loop is completely done, meaning that we've updated the UI with every found session from the search. So I'm going to go right below my for loop and add this line right here. Game mode, arrow, display search results, pop-up, and I'm passing in search settings, arrow, search results.none. This will prepare us to create the widget as well as pass along the appropriate data. Once we've added that in, we can go ahead and launch the editor again. Now the editor is back open, we need to actually create the widget and fill out the event that we just created in the game mode. So let's go to our game mode BP. In my case, it's called default game mode BP. We were filling out the display session info in here. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to handle our new event in here, display search results pop-up. So let's go ahead and handle this event. Display search results pop-up. It should look like this with the integer and all. And the first thing we want to do is create our widget that we made. So create widget, and we want to pass in session list results pop-up. Now we have the proper widget. We need to pass in our numResults to it. Then we want to drag off the return value and add it to the viewport. And this will display it to the user's screen with the appropriate data, getting the final result that you saw earlier. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. We have new episodes every single Sunday, and subscribing helps the channel out more than anything else you can do, so I just really appreciate it. I want to give another thank you to the YouTube membership, Patreon, and Discord subscription supporters. You guys are so incredibly kind, and I am more grateful than I can tell you, so thank you so much for that. If you had any issues with this tutorial, or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. It's completely free, and I'd be happy to help you so you can keep working on your game. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.